Okay, guys. Uh, Now we're going to talk about forms, right? So I'm going to go back to the folder that we created, create another file called forms forms.html, right? Like so, right? Now we have forms.html. Now before I go any further, remember we've created this smolanyana navigation, right? So I'm just going to add one more link to forms.html there, and I'm just going to copy this link, control C, save that, go to list, add this list item here which contains a link to the form, right? And then go to where we added this links, add it here again, forms. So I'm going to copy the whole thing now. Oops. Control OK, and go to my forms, and again the same thing we've been having. Oops. Dot type HTML. I'm only typing this out, guys, for you. You should be typing these things out until you get used to it. You will start using shortcuts uh, once you are used to typing out the basic structure of an HTML page, right? So we'll have the head here. Inside the head I have title, and then we want to put here forms, right? Forms, and then we have our body, and then inside the body now I'm going to paste in our navigation there, so that I can navigate to any of the we need to change this to forms, right? Forms, okay. Forms, like so. And I need to do the same for this page here. Let's change this to forms, like so. Just copy that, save, index, place that in there, paste that in there, so save. Okay, so the reason I've copied this is because we've created this little navigation, so I can get to any page that that we've worked with up to this point, right? Makes it easier for you. You don't have to open separate pages for each one, for the links, the index. You can find them all in like a single page, right? So I'm going to put a comment here, form. So for a form we use it to collect user data, like your username, your email, your password, your address, your phone number, things like that. That's what we use a form for, right? So we use a form to collect user data. That's what we use. That's what's used normally to sort of like capture your data, right? Form. So for that you need the form tag. Again, like we've seen, it also has the closing tag. So right below my comment here I'm going to put an H1 that says sign up below, right? Let's say sign up below. And in the form we need some sort of like inputs where the user would then type in their name, their surname, their address, and so on, right? We need that information, right? So for that we have let me start with a label for that input, right? We need an input where the user will type in their name, password, or whatever, but we also need a label for that input, right? So let's start with the label tag. So label like that. It has a closing again. So let's say the first thing we want from the user is their first name, right? We want their first name. Now underneath my label, right, I need an input where the user will type in their first name. So for that, I'm just gonna go input like so. Now we've talked about attributes. href is an example of an attribute. So I'm going to type now the type of input that I'm looking for. So type equals to text. The type of input that I'm looking for is just for text, regular text, right? I also would like to place another attribute which is called placeholder. So here I'm going to type in first again name like so, right? And that's it. Now you'll see now this is a tag that doesn't have a closing tag, right? This is called a self-closing tag. This here, what you see here, this is called a self-closing tag. So you don't need like the closing tag for this one. It just closes itself. So I'm just going to copy these two, copy them below like this, so that will be your last name, your email, your password, confirm password, right? So let's change this to, let's also change it there to last, so that it says last name. The type is still going to be text, right? So let me sort of like put spaces in between this so that it makes sense, that it looks cleaner, doesn't confuse you guys. Okay, now that's your last name, and here we're going to need your email, right? So I'm going to change this to email, and I'm also going to change the type here to email, right? The label for this one, let's go for password, right? Password like that. Change the placeholder, password like that. Change this the type again to password, right? And then for the last one, the last input, we're going to change this to confirm password. We're going to change the type to password, and that's it for now, right? So we have our first name, type text, we have our email, we have our password there, right? Okay, great. Now we need a button. We need a button here. So to add a button, simple button like that. Let's put in a type here, attribute of submit like that, and we want to say submit also, submit also here, right? We're going to say submit right there. So let me save and let's see what we have. So you go back to our page, let's click on our forms page there, a link rather, and as you can see, so this first part here, that's your label, and then the text you see inside the input there, this is my input here, that's your placeholder, and this whole thing where I'm typing right now, that's your input field, right? So this is of type text, type email, type password, and when you type here, as you can see, if this the type here was text or email, then I wouldn't have the ability to hide my password as I'm typing it. Same thing for my confirm password, and there's my submit button there, right? Everything on the same line. So let's go back and see another example of a self-closing tag. So if you go back here, if you look at these input fields, you see the label and the input, they're on the same line. Like everything is on the same line here. You see that, right? Everything here is on the same line. Let's break them apart, right? Let's break the first input. We want the first input to be on its own line. Same thing for the next input, the last name, we want it on its own line. We want everything on its own line, kind of like this here. So for that, there's another tag which I'm going to place right next to the input field called the BR tag, which stands for break line. So I'm just going to copy that, put it here, copy it again, put it here, copy that again, there and there, right? I don't need to place a BR tag on my button because there's nothing after my button here. Nothing comes after that, right? So if I save and let's have a look, you'll see now this is starting to look like a normal form now, right? You have each input field along with its label on their own line. I can also place the label on top of the input using the BR tag. I can also do that, right? I can also do that. So there we go, your form. Usually with your forms, right, you sometimes have like let's start with let's say you wanted also to capture the gender of the user, right? So we'll copy this, the label here, we'll copy that, come down here, paste the label and say change the text here to gender, right? And then have an input field of type radio, like so, right? We're going to give it a name of gender. These are attributes, right? Let's remove the ID for now. We'll talk about IDs and classes later. For now, let's remove it. Anyway, this type of input, this is a radio, looks like a checkbox. You'll see an example of that. So the value, let's add another attribute called value. We're going to say female, right? Female here, right? And then we're just going to copy this, and change the value for this one to male, right? So for now, let me remove this name attribute. Here, like that. Let me remove it for now, and then right next to female, I'm going to put the value here, female. This would be the text displayed next to the radio button, right? So yeah, male for this one. Save that, and let's have a look. So you see now we have gender. You can choose female or male, but now you see we have a bit of a problem here. When I click, usually with these radio buttons, you can only pick one. You cannot pick both, right? Wouldn't make sense really to be able to pick both of these options, right? So let's go back and fix that. So what is happening is, at the minute, these two input fields they are not related in any way. The browser doesn't know that we want the users to be able we want the users to pick only one option from these two. So we need a way to tell the browser that we want the user to pick only one of these options here. So the way to do that is to use that name attribute we removed, right? And it has to be the same. So name equals to gender. I'm going to copy that and paste it down here. So the name equals to gender for both of them. What this does here, the name equals to gender part name, it can be anything as long as it makes sense and as long as it is the same for the items you want to group together. So what we've done here is we've created a radio group, right? So now the browser knows, just simply by adding the same name, the name attribute with the same value, right, for both of our radio buttons, the browser now knows that, okay, this is a radio group, meaning that users are only allowed to pick one option between the two. So if we go back to the browser now and I click on male and I click on female, you see now I can only pick one. We also have another type of input which is called a checkbox, right? Now a checkbox, that's the one we use normally when we want to let's add that BR tag here, right, first. So we use a checkbox, right, when we want to let me also add it here again, save. Okay, anyway, we use a checkbox when we want the user to have like multiple options, right? When we want the user to pick not just one option from a list of whatever it can be. Let's make an example here. Let me add a label and say, let's remove this for attribute here. Let's say favorite. That's how you write favorite, right? I think so. Favorite programming language, right? Favorite programming language, that's the label. And underneath this we're going to add a few input of type check box, and let's add 3, right? Let's add 3 of these. Let me break them apart. Let's break them apart like so. Okay, good. So let's remove the ID portion. Let's remove the ID portion here like that. And then for the name, again, we're just going to say language. And don't worry guys, I will teach you all these shortcuts that I'm using here. For now, I want you guys typing this stuff until it sticks. So language, like so. So they all share the same name, and then we can add the value attribute. And the value attribute here, for this one, let's say C, right? The C language, that'd be it's a C programming language, right? It's one of the languages that we have. So say here value, let's say Java, right? Let's add another one value here. We're gonna go for Python, right? Python, like so. So these value attributes, these are not the values you see here, the male and the female. No, these we use for database purposes. For instance, when the user clicks on female, right? Let me go back here. When the user clicks on female, or I mean male here, that value attribute will be reflected where when this form is being submitted, when the user clicks female and then they click on submit, when this form is being submitted, the value associated with this male radio button here, that's the one that will be submitted on the database, meaning this value here, when the user clicked male on the database, when this form is submitted along with the last name, email and so on, the value for gender will be male. Same thing applies here. When the user clicks on checks rather on the C input checkbox, right, when they click on this and submit the form on the database, it would reflect that the user chose the C language as their favorite programming language, right? So next to the input for C, I'm going to put C here, and then next to Java I'm going to put Java here. Oops, let's make that a capital. Next to Python I'm going to put Python here, like so, right? So let's save and have a look. So you see now, favorite programming language, you can choose this, you can choose that, and also this. You can choose all three, or you can choose two, or you can choose one or none, right? So that's a checkbox, right? Let's put this label on its own line by adding a BR tag here, break line. Save that just to clean it up a bit. There we go. Let's put the button on its own line. Oops. There we go. Save, and there we go. The button goes on its own line there. I know this thing it's not looking clean at all, but I will show you how to clean it up using CSS, right? Very well. Very well. That's your form, right? We've created the form, uh, and that's how you create a form. So hope everything makes sense. See you guys on the next one.